Hey friends, welcome back for another video. My name is Tanya, for those of you that are new here, and I am a watercolor artist. We've had owls that have been living in our backyard for several years now, but I realized about 2 weeks ago a third one has joined them. And I've been watching them a lot lately, and I was really inspired to paint one for you. So I hope you enjoy the video. Okay, so to get started, I've got my Arteza watercolor paper. I have a pencil, an eraser. I have some paintbrushes here, different sizes. I have a 0, a 5, and a 6. I have my Winsor Newton watercolors, my paper towel, 2 cups of water, and then right at the end, I'm going to be bringing in my Arteza brush pens. These are watercolor markers. I've used these in videos before. I love these. So I'm just going to be finishing off my painting with these and a little bit of Dr. Martin's bleed proof white. So that's all I'm going to be using. So we're going to be lightly sketching out our owl first. And owls are actually pretty simple. They're just kind of like a little oval with some ears. And you just have to kind of just put in like a little bit of like a head, just chisel out a little bit where the head is going to go and the tail and all that. But for the most part, owls are very easy. So I'm going to show you how to draw one really quick. And I'm going to bring up his little ears. Now it just depends on what owl you're looking at or referencing. They're all different. But the one that I'm going to be painting today has got this like chubby little body and these little ears that kind of curl up. Just kind of simple. And I'm going to make him kind of like sitting on a branch here. So I'm going to just pencil in where I want that branch. But I just want a chubby little owl. Very simple. We'll have a little bit of it peeking down here. And then I'm just going to bring in a couple little claws. Just like that. Just very generic. And then I'm going to start penciling in where I want his eyes. Now, owls have really big eyes. I'm going to be doing mine with like round eyes. There's all different shape eyes on owls. Just depends, like I said, which owl you're looking at. But I want to make mine really cute. So I'm going to be doing big round eyes. Now, their eyes and their little beak are kind of near each other. It's almost like right in between here. So it kind of starts right up here. And you could just do kind of like a little oval and then just taper it off at the end here into like a little point. So this part of the beak is a little bit rounder and this part down here is a little bit more pointy. And you can make your eyes as big as you want. Owls, you could even exaggerate them. If you want to make it more of a cartoony type of drawing, you could definitely even exaggerate your eyes a little bit and make them even a little bit bigger. Maybe I'll bring out like a little wing like this. Bring this part of his body out a little bit. Okay, so that's about all I'm going to be drawing at this point. The rest of it is going to be paint. So I'm just going to erase a couple of my little lines here. So go ahead and just erase whatever you don't need. Just go ahead and erase it now, because once you put down your paint and you go over your pencil, it's hard to erase your lines. So you want to go ahead and erase your lines that you don't want right now. And then just take an old brush and just wipe away your eraser shavings. Try not to touch your paper with your fingers because it will leave a little bit of an oil, and then sometimes the paint doesn't absorb into the paper the way it should. So try not to touch your paper too much with your fingers. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a bigger brush here. Actually, I need a bigger brush. I didn't pull one. Let's go ahead. I've got all my brushes here. I'm going to go ahead and just pull this one. So I'm using a size, this is a 12. And I'm just going to go ahead and get my owl nice and saturated here. Now you don't want it that it's puddling full of water, but you do want to get him nice and wet. So if you look at your paper, it's hard to see just water going down on white paper, but if you look at your paper in a light or look at it sideways, you can see the glistening of the water, and you'll know that you have laid down water there. you'll definitely see it. Now I'm just gonna do his body. I'm gonna leave his head alone at this point. So I'm really just wetting from his eyes down. All right, and I'm gonna be just doing just whimsical colors. If you wanna make your owl a little bit more realistic and use browns and creams and whites and all that, you know, definitely go for it. I am the type of artist that I don't do realistic paintings. I like things to be a little bit more fun and whimsical and colorful. So that's what I'm gonna be doing today. But again, you do not need to copy my colors. So I'm just gonna be pulling in, actually I'll show you. I'm just gonna be pulling in maybe some of my pinks and my purples today. I'm gonna kind of just use already what I've got on my palette. So I believe that's a violet, and then this one is the opera pink, if you're following along. And then I'm probably gonna be using some of these turquoises and greens and yellows that I already have on my palette. So again, use whatever you want. So, okay, so my paper is nice and saturated, and I'm gonna start bringing in a little bit of my paint here and there. I'm not gonna be filling it in all the way because I do want some variation of different colors in here, and I also wanna leave a lot of white on his belly. So I'm just going in kind of where I want more color on my little owl, maybe around his beak. Around the eyes, I'm gonna leave a little bit more white, almost like, because owls look, well, depending again on what owl you're looking at, but the owl that I'm imagining has got like this little mask, this little white mask around his eyes. So I'm just gonna leave a lot of that blank up there. And I didn't put water on his head, but I'm gonna still be bringing in a little bit of my purple. So this is more of a wet on wet technique, and down here's a little bit more of a wet on dry, just to show you the difference a little bit. But I wanted to keep my paint up here a little bit more crisp. So that's why I didn't wet it. Down here, I want it to bleed into each other a little bit more. And I'm gonna bring a little bit up into his ears. Grab a little bit more. And here again, if you think that your owl needs a little bit more of a forehead, the head needs to be bigger, then definitely bring it up. You don't have to stick with your pencil marks. It's not set in stone, so you can always just alter your painting as you go. So see how I'm getting the lines there, the crisp lines of the purple and the white paper still showing through. I wouldn't be able to get that if I did the wet on wet technique up here, so that's why I wanted a little bit more just crisp up here. So I just left my paper nice and dry. I'm gonna bring a little bit down between his eyes, a little more around his little beak. Right like that. And my paper's still wet down here. It is starting to dry, I do see that. So if you need to get a little bit more water on your paper, definitely do that. I'm gonna leave his belly part a little bit whiter, but I am gonna be bringing in the little ruffles of his feathers. So I'm just coming in kind of on an angle. I'm not using the point of my brush. I'm using my brush on an angle, and I'm just kind of coming in with these like little lines here, just to make it look like there's the ruffle part of his belly. Deepen up some of the colors over here. If you want to start bringing out a little bit of like the feathers, so it's not exactly like he's, you know, a solid oval, you want to bring out a little bit of these feathers here. Just kind of wing it out a little bit. And here again, if you think that you want your owl to be a little bit rounder, which I think I do, I'm just gonna kind of come in and just round out my owl a little bit more. I want him a little bit chubbier. And then I'm gonna bring out all those little wispies of his feathers. And then I'm gonna start doing this wing as well. And I didn't wet this, I don't think, or it already dried. Maybe I did wet it at the beginning, but it already dried. So right now it's the paint just going on dry paper. And I want to leave a little bit of white space here again. And let's see, bring out some of those feathers this way. And I want want some of those little wispies to come out over here too. But I'm going to try and leave, like I said before, I'm going to try and leave a little bit of that white around his eyes. He's already looking really cute. All right, I think I want to make him a little bit more chubby on this side too. So I'm going to bring out that wing a little bit more. There. Sometimes you just have to step back and just look at it as a whole, because sometimes you can get a little bit caught up in the details. Just stop what you're doing, look at it as a whole, and see if the actual shape is nice. If it is, then keep continuing. If it's not, then you just might want to bring him out a little bit and just redo that shape a little bit. All right, I'm going to be bringing in a little bit more of my pink now, just to bring in some of those pinks. I'm just laying it down wherever I want. There's really no rhyme or reason. It's just wherever I feel that I need some of that paint. A little bit of pop of color on my painting. And if I want to bring them down in those little ruffles a little bit. Remember, try to keep some of that white space here. It's okay to go over, you know, some of it, but if you want to leave his belly a little bit lighter and brighter, then definitely leave that white space. I'm going to bring in a little bit of yellow. I think this is a cad yellow, and I'm going to bring in a little bit of yellow at this point. And just kind of dab a little bit here and there, more towards the bottom of his belly. A little bit on his wing here. Now, yellow and purple make brown, so you will start seeing a little bit of that brown hue, which is fine because owls are brown. So to me, it doesn't matter if I'm starting to get that brown. But if that bothers you, then don't do two complementary colors, like purple and yellow, and blue and orange, and red and green. But if you don't mind that brown color, then definitely you can totally start doing complementary colors. Put a little bit of yellow around him here and around his ears. I'm just bringing in color wherever I think it needs it. I think I'm going to pop in a little bit of blue now. I've got a little bit of an aqua on my palette that I showed you before. I'm just going to start bringing in a little bit of an aqua color. I don't even know what color that was on my palette. I'm just using what I have because this is supposed to be a fun and whimsical painting. So I'm not getting caught up in what colors I'm using. That's why I'm not even telling you what colors I am using. I just don't want you to get caught up in that. You can make your owl red, brown, green, whatever. I'm just doing a little bit of bright colors. Let's see. I'm going to be pulling in a little bit more of this darker. I want to get him a little bit darker under his wing here. And a little bit darker over here. And then we're going to be, you know, layering this. We're going to keep putting layers on it. So it's okay if it's not getting as bright and vibrant as you want at this point. We can blow dry it and then just put more layers down. But for right now, I'm trying to get in, actually I'm going to be putting in a little bit of Payne's gray right now, just to get a little bit of a deeper tone around his eyes, around his beak. I know it looks weird right now, but it's going to all come together, I promise. Paintings always have an ugly stage, especially more towards the beginning. And then you see how it starts pulling together. So just deepen up those tones a little bit. I'm gonna deepen up a little bit more around here, around his little eyes, which is kind of like that little mask. It's almost like he's wearing a little mask. And obviously birds are very feathery. That's what they've got. They've got feathers. So you're just going to be kind of bringing in these like little marks here. Give it some texture, some feathery texture. And you can start chiseling away a little bit at that white mask we left around his eyes, and you can start bringing it in a little bit just to kind of give it that feathery look again. All right, he's looking really cute. I'm gonna start on his eyes right now while I let the body dry. So I'm gonna be switching over to my size 5 brush, and I'm going to be bringing in a black. And I'm going to start outlining his eyes here a little bit. Oop, a little too much. Actually, you know what? I have a brush that I want to use. This one's a little bit pointier. Always try and see which brushes are a little bit pointier for like the more detailed areas. These are kind of the same size. Actually, I think this is a 5 and this might be a 4. It might be a little bit smaller, but for some reason, this brush seems a little bit pointier. I want a little bit more detail on his eyes, so I'm just going to switch over to this brush. I don't know why, but sometimes my brushes some are a little bit pointier, some are a little bit rounder. I'm going to go around his eyes here. And again, I'm just using a black watercolor. It might even be a gouache. I've got my watercolors and my gouaches together on my palette. I have a feeling this one is a gouache. All right, I'm going to let that dry a second, and I'm going to do the interior, the pupil part. Now you're going to want to leave some highlights. We are going to go over this with a little bit of that bleed-proof white at the end for some highlights and stuff. But here again, just leave some white space. Kind of like we did down in his belly. Leave some white space where you want, you know, some of the highlights. And I'm actually going to make that pupil part of his eye a little bit bigger. Owls have very exaggerated eyes. I got a little too much water on my brush. Okay. Now I'm going to start the other eye and let that dry a second. Try to get your circles the same size as best you can. And here again, don't forget to leave that little bit of white space for where the highlight's going to be on his eye. Highlights on eyes are really important. Always, no matter if you're drawing an animal, a person, whatever, always leave a highlight on the eye. It just gives them a little bit more of a realistic look. And you can always close up that highlight, but for right now, just leave it. It's better to have more than not enough. But if that's the case, that you want a little bit more towards the end, that's why we're going to bring in our bleed-proof white, because you will use a little bit of that at the end. All right, he's looking cute. I think this part is nice and dry. Well, for the most part, still cool, which means it's still damp, but that's okay. So we're going to be bringing in more colors. Now I'm getting really bright with my colors. You do not have to get this bright with your colors. That's just the way I like my paintings. Go around his beak a little bit. I'm bringing in that violet again. That's a nice deep color. Just kind of following along with what I've done already. Just deepening up my colors, adding a little bit more texture. And I'll make it look very almost striped up here. So I'm going to leave a lot of that lighter space up there. I'm going to bring down that purple around his beak here. All right, I'm going to bring down a little bit more down here on those little ruffles of his belly. And I think I want to bring in a little more of that yellow. Maybe right around here. Too cute. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and dry this, and then we're gonna add another layer. Okay, so he's nice and dry now, and I think what I wanna do is bring his body down just a little bit more down this way. So I'm gonna take a little bit of my purples again. I'm gonna bring his body down just a little bit more. He was looking a little too squatty for me. Bring in my pink again. There. And you can start darkening up some of your colors again, once again. I'm gonna bring in those pinks and purples again. And his little claws are like right here. So I'm just kind of gonna go around the claws, just kind of shadow the area that's around it a little bit. Bring that up. That way it gives it a little bit of shadow when we paint in the claws. It'll make a little bit more sense. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and switch over to my smaller brush, and let's see here. I wanna bring in some yellow. Their eyes will, again, depending on what owl you're looking at, but they've got like these, it's almost like it's like a yellow-green eye, really nice and bright. So I'm gonna bring in some of that. Okay, and I'm gonna bring in a little bit of a green, whatever I've got on my palette here. I don't even know what green this is, but I'm gonna bring in a little bit of a green. And I think I might have gotten a little too much green on this eye, so I'm gonna pick up some of it with my paper towel. Just dab it off, like that. And let's go ahead and pick up a yellow for his beak. And you wanna leave a little highlight on his beak too. And I'm gonna pick up a little bit of whatever brown I have. It's almost like an orangey brown. Kind of go around the beak a little bit. And I'm going to bring in a little bit of that color into his eye as well. Maybe more towards the top here. All right, so we're going to let that dry, and we're going to just start deepening up some of those colors again on his body. You know what, actually at this point, well, let's go ahead and do the claws, and then I'd probably deepen up some of his body with those watercolor brush pens that I was talking about. So I'm gonna add a little bit of yellow down here for his claws. And again, it's okay, my purple and my yellow are mixing and they're giving me this little bit of a brown hue. That's totally fine. I don't mind that. And let's see, let's go ahead and pick up a blue. I'm gonna be using a blue watercolor marker. And I'm just gonna kind of exaggerate some of his little feathers down here on his body. I'm just kind of going in a kind of a rough zigzag motion, but kind of circular. I'm doing almost like little C's, upside down C, or actually it's like a U. There you go. It's like a U. And let's bring in a little bit of water and blend that out a little bit. You can make this very textured. You could bring it out a little bit. You could take some of that blue and add it over here. So you don't need to add more of that marker. You could just take some of it that's wet already, get it on your brush, and just dab it wherever you want. So it almost acts, your painting almost acts as a palette as well. All right, so I'm gonna take a little bit of that blue and bring it up in his head here a little bit. Just adding a little bit here and there, kind of spotting it a little bit. And maybe a little bit in his ears too. Add a little bit of water. Let that bleed in a little bit. He's looking really cute. Or she. I keep calling it a he, but it could be a she. I'm going to bring some of that blue out. Since I already have the blue on my paintbrush, I'm just going to bring some of it out. And come around his eyes a little bit more. Or that little mask, I should say. It's not really his eyes, it's the mask that I'm coming around. Oh my gosh, she's so cute. Okay, I'm gonna add a little bit more yellow. So I picked up this bright yellow watercolor brush pen. And I'm gonna add a little bit of yellow here and there, maybe a little bit around his mask. Maybe a little bit down here. A little bit on his wing. Just have fun with it. There's no rhyme or reason where you're adding this. I'm just having fun with it. Wherever I think it needs a little splash of color, just lay it down. So cute. I'm gonna add a little bit of Payne's Gray just to deepen up a little bit around. Actually, I don't want to deepen up around his beak right yet because the beak is still wet. So I'm not going to do that because then it would bleed right into the beak. So I'm just going to add a little Payne's Gray here and there. Maybe like where his little wing is over here. Maybe a little bit down here on this wing. It's starting to pull together really nicely. He's looking really chubby and cute and colorful. Deepen up these ears a little bit. And you can bring it down a little bit if you want to. I'm going to deepen up in between his eyes a little bit. And my beak is still wet, so I'm going to be careful doing that. But I'm going to come around here a little bit. Just kind of exaggerate that little mask. I'm going to go around his beak. I think the beak is kind of dry. And even if it's not, if it bleeds into it a little bit, that's totally fine. Oh, he's looking so cute. All right, I'm going to deepen up down by his claws. And I'm going to use a smaller brush. I'm going to deepen up that yellow around his eyes once again. And I'm going to add a little bit of that yellow to his beak too. Close up a little bit of that highlight. And I think I'm going to blow dry him and start doing more of the detail around his beak and eyes. Okay, so I am going to add a little bit of shadow around his eyes now, so it's not such a stark line between the eyes and that little white mask around there. I'm just going to shadow it a little bit. So I'm just picking up a little bit of my Payne's Gray, and I'm going to go around the eye a little bit with just a little bit of Payne's Gray, very watered down, just to give it a little bit of a shadow. Break up that line there between the two. And I'm going to do that around the other eye. There. Softens it up just a little bit. Don't worry about covering up too much of that mask. We're going to come in with that bleed proof white and just go over our white a little bit here. If you want to deepen up, or darken up I should say, the tops of his eyes, you could definitely do that too. Give it a little bit of a shadow. There, see how that exaggerates it so much more? You just give it a little bit of a shadow on the top of the eyes and right away it pops the bottom of the eyes. I'm going to do that to the beak as well. I'm going to deepen up around here. You can use black, you can use blue. I think I'm using Payne's Gray. Still with that feathery motion. I'm going around it, softening it up. Go around the beak. I might have grabbed a little too much there, but that's okay. I like my paintings to be a little bit more exaggerated. Doesn't bother me. I like to experiment and see how far I can push it. How far I can push it without it looking weird. Okay, I'm going to bring a little bit darker in here, a little more of my purple, just to kind of blend it out a little bit under here. And right in here. All right, and I think I'm going to add a little bit more feathers by his ears here, a little bit more wispy. Wow, that made a big difference. So make them as furry as you want, or as feathery as you want, I should say. And it's even bringing his body out a little bit so he gets even a little chubbier. Okay, so let's see here. Let's deepen up his beak just a little bit more. I think I'm going to add a little bit of green to his beak, just down here towards the bottom, just to bring in a different color, just to highlight it a little bit more. I think I'm going to deepen up the green in his eyes. Let's see, just a little bit, maybe just on one side. All right, and I'm going to dry his eyes and then I'm going to deepen up the blacks around his eyes again. And I think I might add a little bit of a blue kind of in the highlight here. Not the whole highlight, but just a little bit, just to add a little bit of a different color in here. And I'm going to add a little bit more black just to the tops of his eyes here. Shadow it a little bit more. And you can keep playing around with this until you think it's right. Till it looks good to you. All right. So let's deepen up his ears a little bit. A little more. I'm doing more of the inside of his ears here, so I'm leaving a little bit more of that purple and brown on the outside here. Oh, and we never did our branch. So let's go ahead and put in a little bit of a color here for the branch. I'm just gonna leave a little bit of a highlight so I'm not making it solid. And you can kind of go over his little claws if you want to. Deepen up certain areas. And I'm gonna take a black, I'm gonna make just a little bit of that nail here. Like that. Deepen up a little bit on his feathers here under his belly. Okay, and I think we're gonna come in with the bleed-proof white because I could still play with this all day, but I think we're just gonna finish it up with a little bit of that bleed-proof white on the mask of his face and in his eyes. So let me go ahead and dry this one more time. Okay, so I am using the Dr. Martin's bleed-proof white, and I'm gonna take a small brush. You can water this stuff down if you want to. I think I'm just gonna use it straight out of the jar, at least first, because I just really want to deepen up his little mask here a little bit, or brighten it up, I should say. So I don't want to go all the way to his eyes, because remember how we left that a little bit of that gray, we brought that gray out from around the circle. So I'm not going all the way to the eye, but I just want to bring in more of the white around that mask, around his eyes. And I covered up a little bit too much, like on the sides over here, so I'm just bringing it out. I'm just tapping my brush, still going in that feathery, textured motion. Bring it out as much as you want. I think I'm gonna bring out a little bit more up here. Kind of close up that gap between his eyes a little bit. And let's see, I'll bring it down just a little bit more. And I do want to exaggerate that little highlight in his eye a little bit. Like that. Let's go ahead and do this eye too. Maybe I'll bring a little bit of right down there a little bit. Let's go ahead and do the mask on the other side. Now you can water this stuff down a little bit if you don't want it as white. But this part of his face, I want really white. So I am not watering it down. You see how that's making his eyes pop already? Look how beautiful that is. Let's bring the mask out a little bit more this way. I'm almost using a dry brush here. There's like no water on my brush. I'm almost dry brushing it. And I think I want to add just a little bit more white to him. So I'm just dabbing in a little bit more white highlights up here on his head. And maybe just a little bit this way. And you know what? I'm bringing it out a little bit more. Exaggerate that mask just a little bit more on his face. Now we left that highlight on his nose. If you want it a little bit bigger, you can. And let's go down here. We kind of covered up a little bit of that white space on his belly. So we're just gonna kind of come in and just bring in a little bit of more texture of that white on his belly. And I'm just doing like a dry brush of this stuff. Just dabbing it on here and there. If you want to give his claws a little bit of a highlight too, if you closed up a little bit of that highlight, go for it. This is just brightening him up a little bit, that's all. And I think I want a little bit of more of a highlight on this wing. It's fun to just come in at the end of a painting and just add a little bit of white highlight here or there. It just pops your painting a little bit more. And I think I'm gonna bring these down just a little bit more. Like they're coming in front of his little beak here. Wow. Now that just changed the whole look of my painting, didn't it? That is so cute. All right, so stand back and see where you need more, or you think maybe you added a little too much. You have to go over it with your watercolor again, whatever. I think I'm gonna add just a little bit more coming up this way. There. He is so cute. Wow, I might just start a little series of owls. These are adorable. So I did another one last night just to kind of practice a little bit, and I wanted to show you, he's on a smaller scale, but I used the same colors and everything. So they just look a little bit different because I just did a couple different little colors. I made this one a little bit more pink, but look how cute they are. I might just start a whole series on these. Thanks so much for watching the video. I hope you liked it and learned a little something. And if you did like it, please give me a thumbs up, and you can make a comment in the comment section. And you can also follow me on Facebook and Instagram. Don't forget to subscribe if you want more videos like this one. Have a great day. Bye.